Hey mates, Blind Prime here, and today I wanted to talk to you about factions in Transformers. We haven't actually talked about this before, and I haven't gotten into any storyline or anything like that with Transformers much in my videos, and honestly I've been kind of slacking on that. I really need to focus more on getting you some Transformers content that is about the canon of Transformers, the background of Transformers, the minutiae of Transformers, if you will, the factions. And today's video, we're going to talk about all five, the five main factions. And, I'm not going to discuss the other factions because there's a lot of different factions out there. But we could talk about the five main ones and possibly an extra bonus faction, number 6, and in today's video. And we'll talk about it from what I understand it to be, which means I've watched a lot of Transformers and, merging those universes together, just sort of like an aligned continuity, if you will, but just kind of my own thoughts and feelings on it. So be aware of that. This is definitely not by the books, but should be fun, right? So let's get into today's video, and please like, share, and subscribe. It helps me a lot in getting more attention to my cause for my channel. And the cause is I raise awareness for the blind and the visually impaired, and I also assist the blind and the visually impaired with their Transformers and help them overcome the depression that comes from losing one's vision. So if you want to help me help other people, then please do everything below that everyone else in this platform asks you to do. I would enjoy that immensely. Thank you so much. So let's talk about the factions. We've got 4 main factions and a 5th faction. The 4 main factions are Autobots, Decepticons, Predacons, Maximals. The 5th faction is Terracons, and then the special 6th one is Quintessons. But that's kind of a different faction because it's not even really aligned with Transformers. But then again, it is with the aligned continuity. You see what I did there? So let's talk about that. Now we got the Autobots and Decepticons, of course. Those are the 2 main factions. Optimus Prime representing Autobots, Megatron representing Decepticons, and everything that falls below them. Then you have the Maximals and the Predacons. You have Optimus Primal representing the Maximals, and T-Rex Megatron representing the Predacons, or you could do Predaking representing the Predacons, if you will. I like Predaking representing the Predacons. So then you have the Terracons, and the Terracons are something special. They're just straight up evil. That is what the Terracons are about. They're about causing terror. They're not trying to rule anything. They're not trying to control anything. They're just trying to cause as much chaos and damage as they can, and undermine both sides whenever the opportunity grants itself. You just watched Tarantulas from the Beast Wars. He was a great example of a Terracon. All he's doing is whatever he wants to do, and everybody else can rot for all he cares, because his plans matter more than anyone else's plans. They don't have an allegiance to anybody else. The Terracons are kind of terrifying in the fact that they just do whatever they want, and they can cause a lot of damage and a lot of problems to people. So that's the main 5. Then you have the Quintessons, number 6, and the Quintessons are they're the Quintessons. It's the Sharkticons and the Alicons and all that other mess that goes with the Quintessons on Quintessa, and they have their own little aspects in history. Now, originally in the Transformers universe, the Quintessons were the ones who ruled over the Autobots and Decepticons, and they created the Autobots and Decepticons, and in those 2 factions. And they did so in the fact that Autobots were automatons that worked the factories. Decepticons were deceitful little things that worked amongst the Autobots to keep an eye on them, and also defended the Quintessons from any Autobot uprisings. They were the soldier class that ruled over the Autobots. And all these aligned continuities of the Autobots were the bad guys, and then the Decepticons overthrew them and became bad themselves. No. I don't like any of those stories. I'm going to be honest with you. I like the stories where the Quintessons and the Decepticons ruled over the Autobots, and then the Autobots rose up and fought back. But they gained allegiance with the Decepticons. So the Autobots and Decepticons worked together to kick the aliens off their homeworld, which is really awesome, And I love that storyline, and I hate that it doesn't happen much. Transformers 1 got really close to that, but it was still, you know, it was still messed up. It shouldn't have been like that, in my opinion. I was really hoping for something a little more, gruesome, something a little more warlike for Autobots and Decepticons joining forces to overthrow the Quintessons. Spoiler alert on that movie, but whatever. Um, it was a really annoying for me to watch that movie and be like, oh, man, if they'd only done this in animation, they would have actually had enough money to animate some more things, and we could have gotten some real cool battle scenes out of this. Instead, we got that movie, and it was a wonderful little Cybertronian movie, but maybe they chose the wrong storyline to use for that. That's at least my thoughts and perceptions on it. So the Quintessons, made the Autobots and Decepticons. The Autobots and Decepticons joined forces, fought against the Quintessons. And the Autobots and Decepticons had a problem of how do we lead this land? And of course, the Terracons were there. And I'm pretty sure the Terracons had something to do with the Autobots and Decepticons fighting each other, because that's just what the Terracons do. They're the hidden faction, the one that's constantly messing with people, the one that's constantly throwing flack, causing the machine to break down. They are the gremlins in the Cybertronian machine. They are the things that are constantly causing problems. And it would be awesome if there was a storyline about Decepticons and Autobots joining forces and realizing that the Terracons have always been terrorizing them. The Terracons have constantly been the aggressors in this. The Terracons have been the whisper in the dark that has caused things to happen. Like Liege Maximo, the greatest example of a Terracon, in my opinion. He did that. He was the whisper in the darkness that led to Megatronus destroying Solus Prime like that. That was totally Terracon activity. That was straight up 100% Terracon. So, now let's fast forward a bit. So we got the war between the Autobots and the Decepticons that was brought about by the Terracons and the Quintessons. And there were wages and wages and wages, and then eventually, it ends with the golden era of Cybertron. You got Decepticon survivors, and you got Autobot survivors, and they figure out a way to make Cybertron work again. And whether or not they make a faction, I don't know. If they make a new Cybertronian faction to cover the blending of Autobots and Decepticons for the new golden age of Cybertron. But we do know in Beast Wars, we fast forward Cybertron by a few thousand years. And now we have smaller robots. Why are they smaller? Because technology gets better over time. They found ways of making better Cybertronians. The Cybertronians had evolved, and they evolved to have smaller forms that required less energon. There was a scene in the original Beast Wars where we finally get a good size comparison between Maximals and Predacons and the old Autobots and Decepticons, and the change is immense. These things are huge in comparison, and it works to make it seem like the Maximals and Predacons are more on the human scale. And we even saw that whenever they were defending the humans in the Beast Wars show. Spoiler alert. That they were about the same size. They're a little taller than humans, but they're around the same size. They're a bit smaller and more diverse. And that was something I always enjoyed about the Maximals and Predacons from Beast Wars, is that whenever, even with the toys from Kingdom and stuff like that, if you got those Beast Wars toys, they could work well in your 1/12 scale collection because they are 1/12 scale. Your Rhinox, that becomes a 1/12 scale Rhino, and that's kind of awesome. And so it works well with like your GI Joes and stuff. You can have some Maximals and Predacons fighting amongst your Joes because that's just the right size category for them. It's not the right size category for Autobots and Decepticons. They're much bigger because of the requirements of the Energon and the fact that their technology was older. Just look at a supercomputer, not a supercomputer, but just look at a computer. Okay, in the 60s, a computer was massive. It took up a building. And nowadays, I'm talking to you on a computer. And my computer is this big. It's a phone. It's super small. It's super sleek, and it's super efficient. And that is what the Maximals and Predacons became. They became super efficient robots. They efficiently managed their energon, and that's why whenever they hit, they landed on old Earth. Spoiler alert. They had that energon influx where there was too much energon in the areas because they had been running on such a minute amount of energon. They had managed to make their machines so efficient that too much energon caused a problem, and it caused their machines to break down. It caused them to break down and nearly perish. And that's not a good thing. But I'm pretty sure if an Autobot or a Decepticon with the old bodies landed on Earth at that time, they wouldn't have had a problem. They would have actually been overpowered, but it wouldn't have caused them duress. It wouldn't have caused them pain or anything like that. They would have just had that would have just initiated the war on a larger scale because that was enough energon for them to do whatever they wanted. That's a scary aspect. Like that's a horror story right there. Decepticons and Autobots fighting on ancient Earth during the Beast Wars era with all that energon going around them. Something else I didn't like from the War for Cybertron Netflix show to go on a small tangent here. That when Optimus Prime and the Autobots showed up in the far future on the far past Earth, Beast Wars is weird. It's in the far future, but it's also in the far past because of time travel. It's timey-wimey stuff. So in that show, Optimus Prime goes to the far past, but they don't mention the energon problems. They don't mention like he doesn't have problems with the energon or anything like that. And I'm like, but there's energon flowing around you at all times. They have to stay in the Maximals and Predacons have to stay in their beast modes to protect them from the exceeding amount of energon that is in the atmosphere. There's just energon everywhere. It's in the air they breathe. So they had to have the animal forms to protect them from that energy. But the Autobots and Decepticons, when they landed on there, should have been overpowered because of that energy. And that's kind of a shame that they didn't really cover that in the TV show. That tells me the TV show's writers were just haphazard. And honestly, Transformers shouldn't do CGI. It should just move back to animation because animation is the only thing that can really get it across well. It's a good medium for animation. It's a terrible medium for CGI. So those are the factions there. And the reason that the Maximals and Predacons are smaller is because of the efficiency that they had developed. They had become just incredibly efficient robots. And because back on Cybertron, it was still good times. And then Cybertron in the Beast Wars era is a perfectly working place. It's not like the Cybertron from the original Transformers era, G1, where it was like a war-torn wasteland. No, in Beast Wars, Cybertron is a pleasant place to live. It's got its problems, but it's not the wasteland that it was in G1. That's for sure. So that's kind of the general design of the factions right there. And I really like the fact that the Predacons survived. The Autobots came up with the Maximals, and they kind of evolved into Maximals. But the Decepticons didn't evolve into Predacons. The Predacons just became more powerful than the Decepticons. And we even saw that in the original Beast Wars show when Ravage shows up, and he's still a Decepticon. But he's a rare thing. There's not many Decepticons left, and they never even talk about Autobots. I assume all the Autobots are gone. But that was something that I always found intriguing. It was like there is still Decepticons left, but there's not any Autobots left, at least in the Beast Wars. Maybe they did something else in Japan, but I never watched that show. But this has been my little conversation about faction symbols and what they mean, and why there are 6 factions that are the 6 main factions. And how they all intersect with each other. In the Terracons, definitely the reason why all of this has gone down. Everything that has happened negatively to the Transformers, I bet you can be directly pointed to a Terracon. Thank you all so much for watching today's video. I've been Blind Prime. Cream the cat did not show up in today's video. He is sleeping on the floor over here. Cream! So, until next Prime, I hope you've enjoyed it. Bye-bye for now.